It's been quite a pleasure and an honor to be involved. To see all these things kind of develop over time and to see all the different inputs that people have had. I'm a little bit unusual in that I'm talking about a company that I no longer work for, in an industry I no longer participate in. So apart from that, I'm perfect for this, right? A couple things about me. I actually work for Bloomberg now. I run their social media group out of New York. So I've moved to New York. I've done the reverse green acres thing. And I have to tell you, I do adore a penthouse view. It's very nice. It's been kind of a whirlwind tour. And 4 years ago, I worked for Sears Holdings and built their social media experience and partnered with a number of groups around OpenID. Couple things, very quickly. I talk about objectives. These look very nice, but honestly, when I started this thing, I don't think we had objectives. I think what it was is I had a conversation with Brian, and it sounded cool to have access to people's credentials from other sites. One of the big issues that Sears had is that in terms of registration and that sort of thing, we were miserable. I mean, it would have been less than 0.5% of people who actually registered with us, and even a smaller percentage who would return. So we're talking about a few thousand people who would actually sign up. They would usually just click the button to go and buy anonymously. And if you know about Sears, I think someone asked about the demographics and who's using this thing and what does it make sense for in a particular group. And if you know anything about Sears, it's a lot of old people. And some of them are actually dead people too. But that's changed over time. And actually, as we deployed this, we started actually not on the commerce side of things. We started on the community. And who would have thought that anyone from Sears, any of our customers, would have been involved in social media whatsoever, let alone have Facebook accounts or Twitter accounts or any of these things. I mean, the average age was around probably 53, a skew female. But then, as we all know, if we fast forward, that's one of the fastest growing groups on Facebook. So we probably hit it just at the right time because the community that we built now has about 1 million registered users and about 1.7 million people unique coming in every month, so 20 million users plus a year. So we started there as the safe harbor, as it were. To see if we didn't screw it up here, maybe we could apply it to something else like commerce. And we quickly evolved it from there. We did use Janrain, which, let me see this here, is the #1 global provider of OpenID authentication applications, the best value in the world and the universe for all your social ID authentication needs. Janrain. I have to keep checking. But it was actually, to be honest, it was a very painless, seamless experience. We just experimented with it, we optimized it. We were a little bit geeky about it because we not only took the application out of the box, but we optimized it for our particular needs. And we did a lot of things like multivariate testing just to see, what path would work, what path would work best for getting people to register. And very quickly, within a couple of weeks of deployment, we had 400 or 500 people a week signing on through OpenID. We were funded. So we had a number of different results from that. We had definitely thought about doing this as an easy registration path. The line of least resistance is not to get people to sign up for another account. We found that the best way to do this was to use accounts they already had. And that's worked out rather well for us. The also key benefits to Sears was, we increased our registration, obviously. We increased greater profile detail. We were able to target better. And Sears has kind of evolved. I know it's kind of an interesting company, but if you have a chance to ever go and shop there, I can still say this. It's a very innovative experience. They've actually instituted a very social experience on the shopping site, .com. So we can talk about it a little bit more. One of the things also I would say, finish up with that, is that we've looked at the users themselves. They started to skew younger. But they were also some of the most valuable customers that we had. We were able to connect this data to our customer data warehouse, found out they shopped twice as often. They often spent about 1.5 times as much in their cart. And they tended to be much more loyal, so they come back to us quite frequently. all, this kind of worked out well for us. These are the different things we deployed it on. We have a number of social communities at Sears, but then from that, social communities like Craftsman Club and My Sears, we also then expanded it to our commerce sites as well. And actually have opened it up. We have we call it the AS site, which allows for hopefully quite a comprehensive social shopping experience, allowing you to shop with your friends, share that on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. And that's been operating, I think, since about October. So we'll see if that really takes off. These are the ways we deployed it on Sears. One of the big things that we tried to pride ourselves on was trying to keep it simple. So one of the big things that, as a retailer, we found was most applicable for OpenID was the sharing of reviews. We know that this is a big deal. 8% of us look at a review before we buy something. That number goes way up, actually, in the weeks just preceding the holidays as well. So that's the last thing you see before you buy something. Now, here's where I'm contentious, which is, I know people like to say that they shop with their friends and ask for their opinions and all that, and I think that's true. But I think I've also noticed that there is somewhat of a tyranny of the group in the sense that people also just want to see the preponderance of evidence. So being able, it's one thing to say, so my friend has an iPad, what do you think about it? That's great. It's another thing to ask your mom, right? You're not going to ask your mom whether the HP color printer is fantastic. And this is a personal experience because I get calls now that we're in New York from my parents asking me how to fix their HP printer. Usually that involves me telling them to pull the plug and put it back in, but that's a long story. So we found that people are looking at being able to share good quality content. Doesn't always come from their group. What I think people are looking for is reputation, and I think that's one of the areas that I personally would find really interesting to explore with OpenID. This is the evolution I was talking about with Sears, which is, this is actually live. It's served up to about 10% of the people coming to the Sears site now. Allows you to log on with your friends, have your networks on that site, show your friends what you're buying, exchange IDs and so forth. But this is kind of the fullest evolution, and they're kind of testing it out right now to see if it's going to work.
Is the 10% randomly chosen, or is there a criteria that lets you turn it?
I'm sure you can game it, but yes, it's randomly chosen at the moment. Yeah, you can actually go in and type in the Zeta site. You only have to try it a few times to get it eventually. So here are the things that I think when I was at Sears I was thinking about, and even now at Bloomberg I'm thinking about this from a media perspective, which is it would be really, really great if we could solve some of these problems in a comprehensive way. I think more bidirectional functions that are in the control of the user. Being able to say, I really want to post this to this variety of different sites that I've got, only to those people and not those people. I think that would be something that would be very useful. Continue to simplify this. Anything that causes more clicks causes people to flee. So we've seen that time and time again. Anything that we can do to streamline this process and make it as simple as possible, one button, very, very important. Portable reputation is the thing I talked about before, alluded to. I think this is one of the areas that's really the least explored right now. I think it's more about not so much who's in your group, it's more about whose opinion counts more. And I'd love to be able to see us figure out a way to take reputation and port it more universally across one's social experience. And then mobile. I think this gets lost a little bit. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities right now is just making it a seamless experience between mobile, certainly in retail, certainly in media right now. Mobile is the big trend that we're having to wrestle with right now. So anything that makes the jumping between your mobile applications to your web applications and so forth and so on, that's going to be huge. And then for the service providers, it's kind of a mirror of the same things, which is making it simple, making it easier. And are there use cases for sort of one portable shopping cart? We talked about that today. Don't know if that's going to happen, but I think the more that we can have sort of one application that allows people to customize things in a way that's meaningful to them, the more successful we're going to be. That's the one big lesson I think I learned from Sears and also learned from Bloomberg, which is more often than not we talk about these things in the context of what's in it for us. And I think the really big lesson here is always listening and figuring out what's in it for our customers. It begins and ends with that. I mean, if you're not going to use it yourself, if you're kind of touting this thing, then none of your customers are going to use it. So figuring out what's really important, how people use this, how different groups use it, I think is probably the biggest way that we can kind of bring down the barriers that we see today in adoption. So those are the ideas I think I can leave you with, and hopefully we've touched on some of them today, but hopefully we'll find out a little bit more as we go forward. Thanks.
Questions for Rob?
Yes.
Can you share some experiences and learnings about the user experience challenges? As in, when you want to sort of figure out that these two email addresses essentially point to the same account, or when somebody forgets his password. So what were your sort of learnings?
Yeah. Well, if I backed up all the way to where we started with this, if you thought about Sears, if you knew Sears a few years ago, they had literally probably a dozen accounts themselves, right? So the biggest thing is single sign-on for Sears itself. And if you think you have all those accounts, you think trying to keep all that information coherent if someone calls you, this wasn't going to happen. I think the one thing that's been great about this is it's been relatively low impact in terms of people not being able to figure it out. We've actually, when I was there, we were experimenting a lot with messaging and figuring out just how people should be messaged to in order to encourage them to use it. So a lot of that upfront work made it quite simple and easier for us to kind of adopt this, and so far the lessons that we've learned have been relatively light in terms of people running into bumps along the way. The problems that people still have are the usual stuff, which is not so much wasn't able to log in, or I lost my password. Those things do come up, but the biggest things that Sears has is the website's down, my credit card didn't go through. This stuff is really, really frustrating. It's just it's retailing 101. So right now, if I had to sort of organize or prioritize the issues that we're seeing, it's really around the basics, not so much the stuff around the edges. People tend to be quite forgiving with this because they tend to be early adopters in many ways, and they understand that there's sometimes it's not going to be perfect.
Could you expand a bit on the single shopper idea and what a retailer, how a retailer could possibly?
Well, I'm trying to think about how, as you start thinking about how you buy things, constantly going to sites, constantly entering your information, constantly figuring out, let's just use myself as an example, trying to go and run. I thought my card was stored, it's not stored, and I'm putting it in more and more places, which is starting to make me feel very uncomfortable. This is dying. I think this died. It kind of leads me to believe that there's got to be a simpler way. And I think it's not just the idea of having one wallet and one card repository and all that. I think the other big issue here, which we don't talk about that much, is just this idea of security. And I don't know that we've really thought through that very carefully. But this idea, as a country, I think about Europe, and I think about Asia, and they're using various forms of secure and strong authentication. Particularly for the banking industry, we have this huge phishing issue here in the U.S., but we've never really addressed it head on. We create even more layers of security, we think. But what could be extremely helpful is if we had some sort of system that would embed it into the actual fabric of it, have some form of strong authentication, something that actually forces someone to use or enter a code that's kind of chosen randomly for them. It's maybe part of the device, other software versions of it. I'd like to see something like that. I think a lot of customers that we've talked to would like to see something like that. Certainly from the feedback we've gotten thus far. The idea of leaving your card in